it helped me a lot when I went through the TAP course the first time, and they were like, hey, look, most of you are going to have somewhere between 2 and 5 jobs in your first few years after the military. Give yourself permission. It's not a failure. You don't have to go climb the corporate ladder anymore.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual Podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Alf, welcome to the show. You are at Winged Wealth, wingedwealth.com. You've got a pretty prodigious, pretty prolific LinkedIn account too, linkedin.com. Brian O'Neill on there. You're a CFP. You're an enrolled agent, so we can talk some tax stuff. And you have an MQFP designation. I'm not familiar with that one. Can you tell me about the MQFP?
Yeah, military qualified financial planner. Put together Paul Allen, who I know y'all talked to fairly recently. I think he's the godfather and the intellectual horsepower behind it, but I was involved a little bit helping build it out. But the idea was to build a credential for financial professionals that are in the FLA space. So CFPs, AFCs, some of the others, essentially people who are not in the sales side of the business. And how do you as a consumer identify that this person both has military expertise as a service member or a spouse and actually has the professional credentials that you'd like to see, because those are a prerequisite to being able to even take the MQFP test. And then also, do they have more than just a, hey, I experienced the stuff level of knowledge? Has there been some rigor behind determining what knowledge they have, what knowledge they should have? And then, with any good credential, there's continuing education requirements that come with that and things. So it's been a really great experience to see it build out. And because there are a lot of folks in that military personal finance space, this is supposed to be a mark to say, hey, these are the good guys and the ones that, probably can trust to not try to sell you anything other than advice and support if you want it.
Yeah. And what's the easiest way if we wanted to point someone to finding a MQFP person? Where do we go?
Yeah, mqfp.org should be the website. I think if you just Google military qualified financial planner, that would be on there as well. There is going to be a prep course for that exam on the day prior to Mill MoneyCon this year. I believe it's the 14th of May in San Antonio. And so not only is there an opportunity, if you're interested in that, to get a hands-on course that very likely is going to help someone pass, but you're going to meet a lot of other people who are walking the same path. And of course, you guys know that conference is really great for just meeting people who are trying to do the right thing in the military financial services space.
Yeah, because I think, one thing for the military service member is, if they do want to get assistance with their finances, there's this reluctance to go talk to just any CFP or any AFC because they feel like they're going to have to explain what a PCS is and what a dislocation allowance is. And, oh, by the way, half my income last year was tax-free. And have you ever dealt with that? But if you go to someone who has walked the walk and talked the talk and has either served or been a military spouse or has that MQFP designation, then at least there's a baseline level of common knowledge. Yeah. And you can just say PCS, or you can just say I'm an O2, and they know exactly kind of where you are in your career, and they know the kind of the money you're making and the kind of issues that you might be facing.
Yeah, exactly. It's been really positive to see that build out. I'm excited to see where it goes.
So Alf, one of the things on the mind of a lot of military families here, February 2025, as we're recording, there's just a lot of turmoil in the world. There's a lot of news and a lot of news stories about the stock market's going to crash. And we can look back at all the people that thought 2024 was going to be a down year and they ended up all being wrong. It was a great year for the market. But if someone were to come to you or another MQFP or someone from MFAA and they were to say, hey, I want to switch all of my TSP to the G fund because I'm worried about what I'm hearing in the news, what are some thought experiments or some things you would walk through with them before they make a decision like that based on the news?
I'm a person who lives his life with an operating system in my head of some fairly simple platitudes, but they're helpful. So one of them would be that experts have successfully predicted thousands of the last zero catastrophes. It is the job of the news, whether it's economic news or traditional media, et cetera, to keep our attention with the it leads kind of information. Like it's not sexy or interesting to say, hey, the stock market's going to be really boring this year, but you probably make X% in it if you just stay the course. Like that doesn't keep anyone's attention, especially in our kind of dopamine filled or driven world. In that same vein, I forget the name of the guy who said this one, but someone famous a while back said, economic forecasting exists to make astrology seem respectable. And I think that that's another one to kind of point to that just people are always saying, hey, it's going to go higher, so do this thing, or, oh no, it's going to crash, so do this thing. You have to go buy a traditional book or look at a blog that has, more than 140 characters on it to understand that in general, the market does what the market does, which is go up into the right and then have corrections for excesses time to time. And if you just get what the market gets as an average by staying the course, you're going to do just fine. And so, I see doom and gloom in the news all the time. And sometimes it depends on, which side of the aisle is in power, because the other side will always scream bloody murder and then they'll try to sing a different tune when they're in power. But if you look at the actual history of what goes on, one of my favorite charts put out by Jeremy Schneider over at Personal Finance Club, and I've seen other people do the same, but it's a chart of like, what did the stock market do based on every president in the last 40 or 50 years? And there's actually only one presidency where the stock market didn't go up the whole time, and that was George W. Bush. And I'm not here to apologize or cheerlead for him, but if you think about it, he didn't cause the dot-com bubble that cascaded into the first 3 to 4 years of the 2000s. He didn't cause 9/11. So he presided over essentially like three really calamitous periods in the first half of the 2000s. Now, arguably, him and his administration, as the housing market got really hot in the, call it 03 to 07-ish timeframe, like maybe they could have taken the punch bowl away because the party was clearly getting rolling. Maybe they should have brought in some fiscal policy to do that. But the things that led to that great pullback in 08, 09 were complex. It was not a single unitary thing that any one person did. So anyway, like that was the only presidency in the past modern history where you lost money during that presidency just because there were so many calamities all at once. But all the others, you did just fine. So if you think that the current president is just going to burn it all down, people have said that about others in the past. And the market does what it does because it predicts that capitalism will continue, that there will still be decent rule of law, that there will be an incentive to go out and invent things and generate profits, and that we'll still have decent property rights. And those are the reasons why you can invest in the stock market. So I think as long as we still have those three things, you can tune out the news and like go have deep, meaningful relations with humans, which is the whole reason to be on the planet, not the doom and gloom in the news. All right, that's my riff on that.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap my head around. Some military families struggle so much to say, I can't even find $100 to invest a month. And others are arguing of whether like a CSI mix of 80-10-10 is better, or if Dave Ramsey's an idiot and you should do 100% C. It's like what you can really control is how much you spend and that you keep investing through the long term, not if your strategy is the most efficient or the perfect one out there. How do we get people to understand that they have some control in what they invest and what they spend and not fighting over those small details?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything new to say here. We pay attention to the other, whether we don't like the other and we want them out of here, or we like what the other has and we want to get some. Every time we find ourselves keeping up with the Joneses or having caught up with our Joneses, we just invent new Joneses. And so that hedonic treadmill, I think, prevents us from being happy. Like, I think one of the ways that we stop overspending is to just choose to be happy with what we have so that we can, and again, I'll channel Jeremy Schneider because I think he's got some great elegant simplicity on this, but like live within your means and pay yourself first by saving. And yet people don't live within their means. And we've all seen it. And you guys talk about it a lot, going out and buying expensive cars that you can't afford. I'm in my highest earning years I've ever had right now. I own two of the cars I own are 15 years old. I mean, one of them clearly meets the criteria of a birth control car. Like, this is a car that will keep a teenager from ever having any prospects in life. I'm like, whatever, it's safe. It goes from A to B. Like, wealth is what you do not see. And so I think getting away from that idea, gosh, I want to have $1 million. So most people who want to have $1 million think they want to have $1 million. What they really want to do is spend $1 million. And that's not going to make you happy if you don't choose to be happy. I'd say you got to start by choosing to be happy with what you have.
Yeah, we had somebody reach out on Instagram recently, a E3 in the Air Force. and $60,000 saved in a high yield savings account. So impressive. And they were talking about buying it had 30,000 miles on it. It was like a 2021 RAV4 or something, $30,000. And it was like, oh, that's half your money there, man. And so we just had a little conversation about how like, that's a lot of car for an E3. And if you can just, and they're probably in their lowest earning years at this point, right? And if you can just dial down your expectations a little bit, or if you can just hold back just a little bit in those early years and let compounding interest go to work, eventually you can get to the point where you could go buy a $30,000 car basically every year for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But what you quickly realize when you get to that point is it's not going to make you any happier. And you're driving the 15-year-old cars because you've recognized after years of wisdom and experience that going out and buying a new car, there'll be that new car smell, and there might be a brief blip of happiness for a couple weeks, but pretty soon it'll get dirty and it'll need to be washed and it'll have mechanical problems. And
Yeah. The insurance is higher on new cars and all those things. I'm very Dave Ramsey on the car thing. I think drive the cheapest thing that's safe to get to A to B. Don't tie up so much of your money in things that go down in value. And the longer you can suppress that, the wealthier you will be. And it is unfortunate that cars have gotten so expensive in the past few years, because I think it has a lot of people feeling like, oh my gosh, like I don't make 20% more. How am I going to afford a car that costs 20% more? But I also, I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up seeing a Mad Max level number of broken down cars on the highways and streets when I was growing up. Like, cars were pieces of crap that were not reliable. They were broken down all the time. Some of my greatest fears from childhood were the car breaking down on some deserted highway on a family road trip. You hardly see that anymore. Cars are so anymore. Incredibly reliable. And so, people convince themselves, like, I need a new car with all the safety features, the beeps and squeaks. But no, anything built within the past 20, 25 years, you're fine.
I think that's the crazy thing that a lot of people they're getting the message from maybe their parents or their grandparents that, oh, you have to buy new and hold it forever. And, you need the latest safety. But all the safety features that we've added basically are in almost every single car made like you said, produced in the last 15 or 20 years. If that car was top of the market, top of the line 15, 20 years ago, it's going to be pretty safe now. And, Jamie, I know you drive, is it a Honda with all the beeps and squeaks with the...
I have a Honda Accord, thank you very much. It has a heads-up display, too.
But these features, you would have to buy the top-of-the-line Mercedes-Benz, the foreign import car, and now you can get it on essentially... As long as you're not getting the absolute baseline model, you can get it in any car that's available in America. And a lot of times it's mandated, right, with the backup cameras and the blind spot monitoring. So,
well, and to be honest, with safety, like, the most dangerous thing about a car is the meat sack driving it, distracted by the phone that they won't put down.
Yes. If you had to talk to someone about the market, right, the current state of the market, and there's potentially a lot of fear out there, fear of the unknown, fear of what's going to happen, and the current administration. Eric Baskin sent this, and he's another military vet, CFP, and he gave this scenario, and he's like, okay, here, stick with me here. Let's look at some of the headlines. Valuations are stretched. There's concern about the direction of the Fed. There's economic struggles in Europe and China. There's conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and there's a conflict in the Middle East that could expand. Wealth inequality is worsening, and the market forecasters are all predicting poor future returns. And if you read all that, you're like, ooh, I don't know if this is a good time to invest. But those were all headlines from 2014. So it's amazing that there is, you don't have to be that old to see that what is new is old and what is old is new again. And there's literally nothing new under the sun. And yes, there's this technology, AI, right? And it's going to revolutionize, it's going to change everything. We just went through that with the internet, right? That was in most of the people's listening to this lifetime. And so, yes, there will be change. There will be a revolution, and the technology that we'll have access to probably just in the next 5 years, we would have never dreamed that we would have access to that 5 years ago. But at the same time, when you're buying into the U.S. stock market, when you're buying these companies, and especially when you're buying the indexes and you're buying every company that's publicly traded, like you said, you're making a bet that capitalism will continue, that the rewards of hard work and innovation and new products and new ideas will flow to these companies, and you as a shareholder will reap some benefit from that. That's been true basically since capitalism was invented. And in the last 500 years, if you, no matter what time period you were placed in, if you could get access to capital and you could get access to owning pieces of companies, you would do well off in any of those time periods.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the more people can tune out sensationalized reporting, and man, go read a book. Pick up a paper book, put the device down. If you need reinforcement on why, listen to some Cal Newport, but just go read a book on how and why to invest. And you tune out the headlines. I do think, though, to your point, when I'm talking to families about how to invest, in my mind, the first question is, when do you need this money to go do a thing? When is the mission for this money? And I like to chop the timeline up into essentially 3 zones. The first zone would be, if it's money beyond 10 years, we do one thing. If it's money that we need for a goal within 5 to 10 years, we do a different thing. And then if it's money within 5 years, we do something separate. So that long range money, that 10 years and beyond, like if you look at the history in stocks, there are essentially no periods appreciably beyond 10 years where you would have lost money. And so if it's 10 years and beyond, we really do need to outsprint inflation, and we should be invested as aggressively as we can tolerate. And my blog this week actually kind of talked about risk. So if you want to put a note on that to anyone who wants to look at the different dimensions of risk, I'll just say that. But then in that 5 to 10 year period, we are still concerned about inflation, but volatility is a much bigger deal in that 5 to 10 year period. And so we might still invest in stocks and bonds or volatile securities, but we'll moderate what we do. And we might be a little bit less concerned about the tax efficiency of it so that we can diversify into volatility. But inside 5 years, like the risk of your money being in the market and the volatility of the market, whether it's stocks or bonds, is pretty concerning. And so you ought to focus on return of principal, not return on principal. Mm-hmm. And so I am really focused on being in the best available cash equivalent inside 5 years, because I need my money in a very short amount of time. Inflation is not going to clobber it in that period of time.
What kind of vehicles are you recommending for those cash accounts at the moment?
I'm a pretty simple dude. I'm typically going to be saying, hey, because most families I work with are really busy and they're juggling, a lot of flaming chainsaws, they don't want 17 different accounts open, and they're not concerned about, the extra 3 basis points that they can get if they use some sort of account aggregation tool. So if you've already got a brokerage account and it's got a decent money market fund that's earning what most money market funds do, that's one great place to put some money. Of course, you don't get FDIC insurance with that. And so there's, a modicum of risk there. High yield savings accounts, I think, are great as well. And then in general, as long as you're under the limits, you're going to get FDIC insurance with that. And you might get slightly less than a return than you would in a money market. CDs are interesting because bank CDs don't tend to pay that great, but they have some conveniences and such. But you can do brokered CDs at your brokerage. And so you're, again, buying that same account that you already have. But there are complexities, and you can actually lose money buying a brokered CD. But those would be the primary places. I don't generally have folks investing directly like into treasuries and things like that, just because it gets to be a bit of a hassle. And so if they're wanting simplification, you kind of end up in one of those like money market, high yield savings, CD kind of places.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to the show.
Hey, Spencer, I got a cousin that just graduated from high school, and they're about to start basic training in a few months. Any ideas on a gift I should get him?
Yep, sure do, Jamie. The Military Money Manual, A Practical Guide to Financial Freedom, is a concise, easy to read, and practical guide to your military money. It's the book that I wish someone had handed me on my first day in the military. In the book, I explain the exact money tactics and investing strategies that can enable you to achieve financial independence while serving in the U.S. military. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and my website. It's hardcover, paperback, ebook, Kindle, and audiobook. You can get a special discount using promo code podcast on my website, shop.militarymoneymanual.com.
Alf, you mentioned to us before we started recording about how Backdoor Roth occupies a lot of your time with you and your clients these days. Can we just take it back to the very beginning of starting with what is a Backdoor Roth and who needs it and why it's kind of a hot topic for a lot of military families or veterans these days?
Yeah, you bet. So Backdoor Roth starts with the topic that if you make too much money, you're not allowed to contribute directly to a Roth IRA. And the problem with that is that most people don't realize that there is any sort of limit like that until they're, a year or two past it. And they're maybe, their tax pro is telling them, hey, you shouldn't have done that, or their tax software is telling them, hey, maybe you shouldn't have done that. So the limit in 2025, it's actually a phase out range, 236 grand up to 246. And it's based off of modified adjusted gross income. But for most military families, it's just your gross income is the way that it typically works out. So I will tell people that for simplicity's sake, and again, like a simple life is often a happier life, if you make $1 more than 236,000, you probably ought to do backdoor Roth because you're into the phase out range and it's complicated after that. If the starting condition is we make too much money to do a regular Roth IRA, then if we wanted to invest those dollars in some sort of tax advantaged account, and we're already, say, maxing out our TSP and we don't have like a solo 401k, then putting it into a Roth IRA is like the best available and or the least worst. So if I wanted to invest the money in the most tax efficient way, it's very likely that some method to get it into a Roth IRA is the most tax efficient thing available. So backdoor Roth is essentially just an administrative penalty lap for high earners because you still get the money, the same $7,000 contribution if you're under 50, into your Roth IRA, but you got to do this penalty lap by putting the money into a traditional IRA first, and then you move it from the traditional to the Roth. And then you need to fill out an extra tax form to basically tell the IRS that you did that. That's the simple version is you make too much, so you do the administrative penalty lap, but put it in the traditional first and then roll it over and clean it up on the tax returns. There's more to the story, but that's kind of the basics of it.
In a military context, though, like if, let's say you had two dual military, like two captains or two majors, are they even going to be getting close to this limit and have to start worrying about the backdoor Roth IRA? Or is military pay so essentially tax efficient because we're getting so many untaxed allowances that this isn't really something you're worrying about until you're maybe up into like the 05, 06 range?
So two majors are going to be there pretty quick, especially if either one of them has some sort of career field pay like flight pay or medical pay. A single person gets there pretty quick as an 04 or 05 with a chunky bonus because the single tax brackets are pretty punishing. And so the number I quoted a minute ago was 236. That's married filing joint. For single, that phase out range starts at 150 this year. So interestingly, though, as a single income family for officers, basically like most general officers don't have to do backdoor Roth because the income caps keep them basically right under that. So if you're single income, probably don't have to worry about it. But if you're dual income, couple majors, single person with some extra, bonus pay, and then a couple 05s and beyond, it is a factor. For enlisted, same thing. It's really going to be dual income, probably not both E8 or E9. Maybe one's a civilian, maybe one's an officer. Those situations bring it up for military. Where it hits most military families is the year of retirement or the year right after retirement, because now they've got their pension plus the new job. And again, even with a single income family, that often puts them over the threshold.
This limit does not apply to any Roth TSP contributions, right? This is only specific to an IRA.
Correct. Yeah. So IRA limits and TSP or 401k limits totally separate from each other. So there's no income limit tied to Roth TSP. And I think another one that often gets confused, I like to jokingly say that there's a lot of C words in personal finance. So is it specific to IRAs? You have contributions, and then you have conversions, and then you have characterization or sometimes recharacterization. So there is a limit on IRA contributions, and that's, again, $7,000 under age 50, but there's no limit on conversions. You can convert infinity of dollars. And so sometimes people will also be concerned, hey, I just retired. I want to Roth convert some of my traditional TSP money to my Roth IRA. And they'll think that they can't also do a Roth contribution to their IRA that year. Not true. There's only an annual limit on contributions. Conversions are infinity.
Since we're talking about Roth and IRAs and TSPs, the TSP is adding in-service Roth conversions, which is going to open up some interesting opportunities for military families. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm fingers crossed that it happens as soon as they say it's going to. I think 2026 was the advertised time frame. The really great thing about this is, if you take, let's just say a married 05 that is single income family, they're probably just barely into the 22% bracket. But if they're, an 05, they've been around and there's a decent chance some of their early contributions were traditional TSP. And heck, you could even take a situation where it's someone who switched to BRS or came in under BRS. All of the government's contributions have been pre-tax, even if their own personal contributions were Roth. So
Right.
if you're at, say, 10, 12, 22%, those are historically low tax rates. And so the option to go ahead and convert some amount, and you probably wouldn't do it all at once. You'd probably do it over a series of years to kind of burn down that pile of traditional dollars into Roth dollars. But you'd be taking advantage of what are most likely your lowest lifetime tax rates. So hopefully that will happen. There's really no reason. It doesn't, the whole reason for Roth and Roth conversions is so that the government can get more revenue sooner versus waiting until we're in retirement or we die. So there's really no disincentive for the government to do this because it brings in more revenue sooner. It's not like we're getting one over on them. They both can do the math on what your future tax rate might be, and then they can change the tax rates in the future or the taxation of Roth. I don't think they'll do that, but I do think that there'll be a lot of people hitting the button as soon as that option's available, myself included.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that you're paying your taxes regardless. It's just there's this unique opportunity when you're in military service that your effective tax rate is probably much lower than it would be if you were a civilian earning an equivalent pay. And so, and especially when you add in the CZTE, the combat zone tax exclusion benefits, then you could have time periods where I was looking back at some of my W-2s from when I was a senior captain and a young major, and there's some of the W-2s have $20,000 or $30,000 of taxable income on them when I was making over $120,000 a year when you add up all the different income sources. So that right there, that's, and with a, married filing jointly standard deduction, essentially I'm paying almost nothing in taxes in those years. So there is an opportunity here with the Roth conversion. And again, this is, like Jamie was talking about earlier, where sometimes you're talking to military families and you're just trying to get them to stop spending all their money on the Amex Platinum card. And then sometimes you're talking to some military families and you're debating the merits of a CS&I versus a life cycle fund TSP portfolio. And this is definitely, the Roth conversion is going to be something that the person who's not struggling with the Amex Platinum credit card debt is going to be thinking of. But it just shows that the more you pay attention to this and the more involved you are, the more riches you're going to accrue, because you can notice these opportunities that military service presents where you can convert your dollars, your traditional dollars, to Roth at a very low conversion rate. And there's going to be people who are in CZTEs and able to do these Roth conversions as well. And then you're looking at opportunities where you can essentially move the traditional dollars to the Roth and just eat up your standard deduction.
One thing to note about this, since you're doing a Roth conversion, even though it may feel like something different, it is a Roth conversion, is that you are going to owe taxes on those dollars. So let's just say that Captain Snuffy decides to do a $10,000 Roth conversion and they're in the 22% tax bracket. They're going to owe an extra $2,200 of tax. And the TSP program, I can't fathom, will be any different. The IRS isn't going to let it be different. When you do that taxable Roth conversion, let's just say you do it on December 31st. Okay, you're at the end of the year. You kind of know how much money you've made that year. You know how much you've paid in taxes. It's pretty clear what the effect on your income is. Extra $10,000, 22%, you owe $2,200 more in federal taxes. What I'm getting at here, though, is that you can't and shouldn't withhold taxes from the amount that you're converting. If you do that, you're actually going to pay tax on that tax plus 10%. I suspect that the TSP probably actually won't let you do that because it would be an early distribution from the plan. But that means that you've got to have that $2,200 from somewhere. So Spencer, to your point, this is going to be kind of a first world problem as far as military members, because you're going to both have know that this is a thing that benefits you, suppresses your lifetime tax bill, but that you also have the extra cash available. And then anytime that you have a lumpy income event, your pay isn't just your salary throughout the year, whether it's you do a Roth conversion or you sell a capital asset, that kind of thing. Whenever you do that, it's really appropriate to do a tax projection to see, should I send in an estimated payment so that I'm not going to leave a tip to the tax man by having a late payment or underpayment penalty. So there will be that nuance that I think that folks will want to know about. I'm sure that tons of people will be just like, hell yeah, I'm converting $50,000 this year. They won't send in a tax payment, and then they're going to get punched in the neck on April 15th with a fairly chunky little penalty.
Hey, can we park on that estimated payment for a second? Because I think a lot of people have the perception estimated payments are for people that have a small business or sole proprietors or an LLC or something like that. So you're saying there's situations where military families may need to run that calculation and send in quarterly estimated payments?
For sure. And they may not need to do it every quarter, but they probably are going to need to do it in the quarter that they make the conversion. And, going to the quarters are done via some sort of like weird IRS math. But the quarters are April 15th, which always sucks because you just paid your last year's tax bill and now you're paying current year taxes. 2 months later is a quarter, and that's June 15th, and then September 15th and January 15th. So those are the quarters. You don't have to make them every quarter, just the quarter where you're essentially not paying as you go. You're not up to speed on the trajectory that you need to be for the year. This usually happens when folks have a taxable real estate sale or they sell a bunch of securities. But a Roth conversion is another thing that can drive the need to do estimated payments. And a lot of folks will be like, well, hey, how do I calculate that? Do I need to go and talk to a CPA? Yes, it's best if you go and work with a tax professional. Certainly a lot of folks like me do tax projections because there's some good kind of advisor-facing softwares that help you do that. A shorthand would always just be take your tax rate and multiply it times the extra amount of income. That'll probably have you overshooting, but it'll generally have you not leaving a tip for the tax band. But that only works if you were on glide path with the taxes that you were paying via withholdings throughout the year too. So there's, I guess, a little bit of complexity to it.
I think this is one of those years where it might behoove someone who typically DIYs their taxes to just check in with a CPA and say, hey, let me buy an hour of your time so I can run this plan by you and pay the $300 or $400 that's going to cost. And just to have your work double checked to make sure that, like you said, you're on glide path to make all your payments. You're not going to get hit with any kind of late payment penalties. A lot of people, they might say, oh, I don't want to deal with any of that. But with the safe harbor exclusions that the IRS adds in there, most military families will probably be okay, at least for the first year of any kind of conversion or extra income. But it's definitely not something, having made estimated payments now for many years, it's kind of second nature to me. But the first time you do it, you're kind of like, okay, where is this money going? And am I ever going to see any of it ever again? And the answer is no, the IRS keeps it forever. And actually, this is a plug too. If you're playing the military credit card game, there are ways through irs.gov, there are 3 payment processors where the IRS will actually accept estimated tax payments via a credit card, plus a small fee for the payment processor. But if you're looking to meet the minimum spend on a credit card, this is a way that you can do that. And if you overpay a little bit, you'll probably get it back as a refund, or you will get it back as a refund if you pay more than what you owe.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to keep it the whole time. A couple of techniques on estimated payments. One would be if you are planning on making them every quarter, a good technique, like let's say you think you're going to owe $1,000 per quarter, is send in 1,001 for the first quarter, 1,002 for the second quarter, et cetera. It really helps your own accounting. And this happened to me this year.
Yeah.
When I log into the IRS transcript system, I do not see, for some reason, my first quarter payment, but I know that it was ending in a dollar amount. I went back and I checked my bank account. Sure enough, it was processed. When I went into another IRS site, it is in there. Like they didn't lose it, but for whatever reason, it's not showing up in my EFTPS account. So that is one way to just make it easier. Because if you just do a round number and all 4 of them are the same, it's going to be harder to tease out where things went sideways.
That's a great technique. I haven't heard of that one before, and I think I might start implementing that because I definitely the PDFs are all kind of blurring together in my head, and then especially with those January and April payments, it's like, wait, is this for this year or the last year? Or, oh my gosh. So, champagne problems, right? Great problem to have. Always happy to pay more taxes because that means I'm making more money.
Yep. Other good things to know about the whole Backdoor Roth. I know that's kind of where we got started there. The most critical thing about Backdoor Roth is the starting condition, which, I said the real starting condition is that you make too much money, and so you got to do Backdoor Roth. But when you go to that next step of put your money into the traditional IRA, it is crucial that you have a $0 balance or very close to $0 balance in your traditional IRA before you get started. I mean, very specifically traditional IRA, but in the IRS's eyes, that does mean a traditional IRA, a SEP IRA, or a simple IRA, simple being savings incentive match plan for employers. Those three types of IRAs are all aggregated into pre-tax IRA in IRS speak. And it doesn't matter how many different accounts, like you could have three different things called a traditional IRA at three different brokerages. The IRS does not care. That is all one big steamy lump of pre-tax IRA. And let's just say you have $50,000 in there because maybe you rolled over your traditional TSP into a traditional IRA and now you want to do backdoor Roth. Stop. Go and talk to a professional. There's this thing that you guys I'm sure have heard of before called the pro rata rule. And that just says that basically whenever you have pre-tax and after-tax dollars hanging out inside of a traditional IRA, anytime you move those dollars to a Roth IRA, you are, whether you like it or not, moving a pro rata amount of the pre-tax dollars and the after-tax dollars. So that contribution that you were making for this whole backdoor Roth process, that is after-tax dollars. You already paid tax on that. And so let's just say your traditional IRA has $7,000 in it. You contribute $7,000 of after-tax. There's $14,000 in there. If you subsequently move $7,000 to your Roth IRA and try to hang the mission accomplished flag on your aircraft carrier saying, ooh, I just did a backdoor Roth. No, you did a pro rata. And so what that means is that 50% of what you just moved is after tax, and you don't have to pay tax again. But 50% of what you moved is now taxable. You have to pay tax on that this year. It's fine. You don't have to pay a penalty on it, but you're going to pay whatever your current tax rate is. And then the worst part is the remainder in hanging out in that traditional IRA has that mixed characteristic. It will always be pre-tax and after-tax. And so some folks will call that like you've mixed the coffee and the cream and you can't really pull it apart, although there are some techniques. So it's just seeking simplicity and avoid doing this if you still have a balance in your traditional IRA. We want to clean out that balance in the traditional IRA, move it back to the TSP, move it to a 401k, bite the bullet and do a Roth conversion on it, something like that. But don't start doing backdoor Roth if you still have a balance in any pre-tax IRA. It's an unholy mess that no one would really want to visit on themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I was lucky enough that I was deployed to a CZTE as my income was starting to increase. And so I was able, as I was reading about backdoor Roth IRAs, I quickly grasped that I needed to clean out my traditional IRA and my SEP IRA that I had set up for my business. So I cleaned out both of those, set up a solo 401k for my business, and made sure that the traditional IRA was cleaned out. So now every year when I go to do my backdoor Roth IRA, it's very clean. The money goes into my traditional IRA at Vanguard, sits there for a couple of days for Vanguard's ACH system to catch up, and then I can just convert it to. And the nice thing is Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, they have all made the process a couple mouse clicks. It used to be, once the IRS and Congress blessed it a couple of years ago, the backdoor Roth IRA conversion, and said that, yes, this is in the spirit and intent of the law, which I don't know why they just don't remove the caps, the income caps from the Roth IRA. That would save everybody a lot of time. But regardless, all the major brokerages have made this a couple mouse clicks, and it's super simple. The other thing I wanted to draw attention to here for the person listening to this, if you're approaching that income where you start thinking about backdoor Roth IRAs or you start hearing rumors about backdoor Roth IRAs, your action steps are clear out those traditional IRAs, clear out those SEP IRAs, those simple IRAs, make sure that those are all cleaned out before you start doing this. And then don't worry about traditional 401k. Don't worry about traditional TSP, separate pot of money. The IRS does not care about those in regards to the conversion to the Roth IRA. So you don't have to worry about clearing out your traditional TSP, or if you have a 401k, you don't have to worry about clearing that out either.
Hal, sometimes people talk about non-deductible IRAs versus traditional IRAs when we're talking about the backdoor. Is there a difference in that? And what do those two terms mean? And is it a factor in the backdoor Roth conversation?
I don't think you'll ever find like an account labeled as a non-deductible IRA, although but it's a characteristic that an IRA gets if the dollars in it were not tax deductible, they were after tax. And so this kind of goes to, let's just say I have a traditional IRA at my brokerage and there's $0 in it, and I make too much money to either deduct a traditional IRA from my income this year or contribute to a Roth IRA. I go and I take the annual limit, and let's say that's $7,000. I put that into the traditional IRA. The brokerage and the IRS just consider that thing to be a traditional IRA, but the characteristic of the dollars in it is that they're non-deductible. They won't reduce your taxable income that year. They are after tax, so non-deductible and after tax sort of become synonyms in this context. But Jamie, I think the thing that's most important is that's a lot of complexity that Joe Average, who's out there worrying about killing the enemies and saving Americans, and not being a ninja in the tax code. How do you know all that stuff and how do you keep track of it? And that's a real pain imposed on the U.S. taxpayer for just the complexity of our code. But yeah, no such thing as a traditional IRA. It's just the flavor of the dollars in there. There's one other thing I want to talk about on this process too, and I see this with a surprisingly high number of tax professionals, especially folks that aren't all that familiar with Backdoor Roth, which the financial planning world gets it, but the tax prep world, I don't know if all of them are caught up on it. But it's not uncommon that the investor correctly executes the Backdoor Roth process, but on the tax prep side, it isn't correctly reflected, and they end up paying tax on those dollars again. So you could imagine that, let's just say that if you and your spouse contribute $7,000 each, that's $14,000. Let's just say that your tax bracket is 22%. Math in public, 22 times 14 is $3,080. If you don't get it right on the tax forms, or your tax preparer doesn't get it right on the tax forms, you paid $3,080 when you earn the money. You're going to pay it again when it's double taxed on your tax return. So that's one to watch out for. I gave a talk a few years ago when I talked about doing Backdoor Roth, and then again, kind of going back to C words. So we contribute to the traditional IRA, we convert to the Roth IRA, and then we clean it up on the tax forms. So if you can remember those 3 C's of contribute, convert, clean it up. And to clean it up is to properly interpret the 1099-R form that the brokerage is going to send you. Either put that in the tax software, or just plain language communicate to your tax preparer, hey, this 1099 that you're seeing, this was a Backdoor Roth. That should clue them in. Oh, okay, I need to make sure that this shows up on Form 8606, and it shows up as a distribution on 1040 line 4A, but not on 4B. So that's, again, way in the weeds. But the bottom line is you want to be careful, because it's not uncommon to pay tax twice on this if the tax pro or yourself misses the steps in the tax software.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to the show.
It's no secret Spencer and I are both huge fans of the Thrift Saving Plan, the military's version of the 401k retirement plan. We've both been investing in the TSP for over 14 years and are thrilled to announce we've consolidated all the information you need to know into a new course called the Confident TSP Investing Course.
That's right. The course is a comprehensive guide to navigating the TSP, breaking it down to easy, bite-sized chunks that lay out the basics of the thrift savings plan, the funds available, and the investing strategies so you can build wealth while you serve.
We both know what it's like to be a beginner and to be overwhelmed with all the information that's out there about investing in the TSP. Head over to militarymoneymanual.com/TSP, Tango Sierra Papa, to find our simple breakdown of all you need to know. You get lifetime access, and we'll have a growing library of content. And one of my favorite parts about the course is that for every course we sell, we're going to be donating one to an E4 or below.
Yeah, I love that feature of the course, Jamie. So if you're an officer, an NCO, a senior NCO out there, and you purchase a course, first of all, thank you. And also know that you're helping a fellow service member, a sailor, a soldier, a Marine, an airman, a guardian, a Coast Guardsman, E4 or below, take one step closer to their financial success.
The link's in the show notes, or head over to militarymoneymanual.com/TSP, where you can sign up for the Confident TSP Investing course. Now, back to the show.
So, Alf, lots of great discussion there about taxes and Roth accounts and getting super tactical there. But let's zoom out a little bit. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts. And I know you've been thinking about this recently, about finding a fulfilling career after the military. I'm sure it's something that comes up with your clients, because I'm sure you probably work with people as they're approaching military retirement, and they're looking to transition to that next thing. And it's something that I personally went through in the last couple of years, where I left the military. And to be honest, I don't know if I found that next thing yet, but I'm working on a lot of things, most importantly myself. What have you seen out there? What are people thinking about? And what's some things that you've seen that has worked well for people, and when they're trying to find that next thing after years of military service?
Yeah. I will say that I think, and again, I have no original thoughts, so I'm stealing this from someone. I should probably know their name and give them credit. I'm a big believer that the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And that latter one probably changes a few times over your life. I've had the gift of being ganged up on by a bunch of midwives when my second daughter was being born. And at the last second, they're like, hey, you, buddy, only person with Y chromosomes in the room, come over here. You're going to deliver this baby. And when I delivered my younger daughter, I was like, this is why I was put on this planet. This is the most amazing thing. Okay, that was being a dad and really cool. In the professional part of my life, I found out through the latter half of my time in the Air Force that I think the reason why I was put on this planet is to help people with their personal finances and their money and help them get fulfillment. So that's really important to me. I'm good, standard, lifelong learner, self-help junkie, and there are other things that really stand out to me about that process of discovering what would be the most fulfilling for a second career. And so I think the thing that most of us have a really hard time doing is giving ourselves permission to explore that space. And it's not easy to do. When you think about it, a lot of folks in their last few years in the military are in really high stress jobs, commanding on an important staff, that kind of thing. Like very few people get time to go out and do a lot of exploration and self-discovery about what would truly make them happy. But you're not going to get there if you don't at least give yourself permission to start, reading books, going and having coffee and conversations with people who are in different career fields, exploring podcasts about different career fields, just doing those things that help broaden your horizon. You got to give yourself permission. The Air Force or the military is never going to give you permission to go and explore what might make you happy. So I think that's a big one. No amount of money ever bought an instant of time. It may be really cool to go and earn big bucks doing a thing. Maybe that's airlines. But if you miss all the, milestones in your kid's life, or you're just not there enough to keep enough deposits going into the bank with your spouse, the money probably isn't going to be worth it. And so I do think that trying to seek out that, the Japanese term of ikigai, of finding the thing that you love to do, that you're reasonably good at, brings in a decent amount of money, and it brings some good to the world. If you can find a thing to do in that nexus, you're going to have a pretty fulfilling life. And so it's okay to especially to go to the defaults of like defense contractor and things like that a lot of us do after the military. But I don't find too many people that are like, oh man, I'm so glad I finally get to be a defense contractor. It's just a good paycheck. It's a good lily pad. Like, again, I think the reason why a lot of us get there is it's really, really difficult to give yourself permission to explore those types of things prior. I feel incredibly lucky that what really makes me happy, other than exercise and time with my family and friends, is financial planning stuff. Like I happily get up and read and learn about that and leadership in the morning. And what really helped me understand that, yep, this is the thing, was when I first signed up for my first CFP class, and I was in my 5-sided wind tunnel well of souls job. I had to be at like 6 a.m, but from 4 to 5, I would do my CFP studying, and I loved it. I could not wait to get out of bed and start studying that. And so if you've ever had a thing in your life that you really looked forward to doing that much, pull that thread, because there's a decent chance that it's a pathway to something that is fulfilling. And that way, if you wake up one day and you got some funky lump and you're not going to have a lot more laps around the sun, you won't feel like you wasted them doing something that was your default future. You chose your future. You shaped your future.
That's really important for people to hear, that it's okay to follow your curiosity, and it's okay to do something that you're interested in and that you love. And I so many times, and I don't know if this is maybe just a me thing or an officer thing or a military thing, but I do something because I'm supposed to, or I do because I think there's an expectation that I go and do that thing. And as you get older, hopefully what you start to realize is that that's all self-imposed. Like you almost, no one is asking you to do that thing. And if they are, and you don't enjoy it, then that's on you to start saying no. And I want to go do this other thing that I'm actually interested in, I'm curious about. And it's okay to find those things that when you get up, you're like, I can't wait to do this. And if you find that thing, and not a lot of people find, I think there's a lot of people who are just kind of shuffling through life and just going through the motions. And when you can find that thing though, that motivates you and that you're excited to do, and you can't wait to get back to doing it, just notice that and write that down on a piece of paper, where a sticky note where you're going to see it, and think about how can I align my life such that I can do that thing more often. And it might not be something that pays the bills at first, but I think it's amazing when you look at all the content creators out there and all the opportunities that the internet has opened up. Like if you know more about something than 80 or 90% of the population, which is very easy to do because people are busy and people are doing things. But if you are just that little bit ahead of everybody else, you can very quickly niche down and become the person that knows that thing. And it's amazing what happens when you all of a sudden you have this very specific knowledge and people will pay you to access that knowledge.
For sure. It's a good time to be alive. It's a good time to be a knowledge worker. I get it. Not everyone is going to be able to get there, especially, when you're in that high demand phase of life. You got young kids, maybe a working spouse. You're really in survival mode in a lot of ways. Even if you got plenty of money, you're in survival mode to just get through the next couple months, get through this school year, all the things. But wherever you can to give yourself permission to just explore those other ideas. And it helped me a lot when I went through the TAP course the first time, and they were like, hey, look, most of you are going to have somewhere between 2 and 5 jobs in your first few years after the military. Give yourself permission. It's not a failure. You don't have to go climb the corporate ladder anymore. And I think that's another one where if you could have that mindset that, hey, I may take the airline job or the defense contractor job when I first retire, but I'm going to actively go and seek this other passion, then if the worst happens and you do find out that your time is limited, you'll have far less regret. And I think avoiding regrets on your deathbed, whenever that is a good way to go through life.
Alphys, we're getting close to our time here. Is there anything else you want to leave people with? Where can they find you? You're a pretty prolific writer. As a writer myself, I appreciate how much content you're putting out there, and it reads, you're actually putting some thought into it. It's not all ChatGPT generated.
I've used ChatGPT a couple times, and I walked away thinking like, it couldn't write in my voice. And I enjoy writing. That's the other thing too, is like it's therapeutic for me. So my firm, Winged Wealth Management and Financial Planning, I think you said it earlier, wingedwealth.com. I'm actually kind of paused temporarily on taking on new clients, but I'm still talking to folks that might want to work together in the future. I just hired my first full-timer. I do write a lot, so you'll see my LinkedIn. I put the same things there as I do in the Fighter Pilot Finance Facebook group. I push out my long form kind of Monday content via mail, so you can sign up for the mail list on the website there. Based out of kind of the Eglin Air Force Base, Florida area, but I work with clients kind of all over the world. So it's a good life. I think one last thing too is that there's a lot of people probably listening to this podcast that are thinking about a career change. They like personal finance more than the average bear. They're the person that friends ask about the TSP. There are no shortage of need for people with military personal finance experience that want to get into the industry. It's not that hard, but it's kind of hard, but there's a lot of ways to do it. And so if you're interested in that type of stuff, I think you'll find it in the Military Financial Advisor Association, MFAA. All of us are very willing to talk to people who are interested in the career field. I know you guys talked to Daniel Kopp, and his Military to Financial Planner podcast is a great resource. So if it's something that you like, it's a really good one that you can start dating it while you're still on active duty so that you don't have to marry it before you separate or retire. And there's a lot of ability to get a good running start while you're still on active duty. So I would put that plug in there that if you're interested in this kind of thing, maybe go and see about scratching that itch because it is a good living. You can make about as much as you probably want to eventually, but you can do a lot of good.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.